All right, let's jump into this. Lots going on around the world, particularly the debate, say, between climate change, sorry, global warming, and no global warming, no climate change, just natural cycle. Sorry, a little dry in here. And with all the strange storms we've seen, kind of the sporadicness of them in the last past, particularly high years like 2011 and 2013 and stuff like that. We've seen storms kind of take a different kind of, out of the nowhere, hit you stronger than normal, whatever. Storms in themselves, I think statistically are not up, but there's up years, there's down years. Volcanic activity was major up year was 2011 and 2015. And I'm going to do a thing on volcanoes later. But I just want to read you a little article, so hopefully you guys can bear with me, about the pole shift. Now, apparently, the pole, North Pole, which is always moving, is, I think since the year 1900, is 405 miles further than what it used to be. But the magnetic pole shift versus, you have magnetic north and you have true north, right? So you've got basically the north on your compass is usually about 15 degrees off of the magnetic north. Now that's going to be probably changing a little bit different. So there's a 15-degree difference typically is what, so if you're navigating by longitude and latitude versus navigating by magnetic north, you're going to get a difference. Now the big problem is the poles are always moving, but now what we have is the poles are about 405 miles away from where they used to be, according to Google Earth or whatever, and they're moving towards Russia. But anyway, I'll read you this, and you can take out of it what you will. Magnetic north shifting by 40 miles a year might be a signal of a pole reversal. The magnetic pole is moving faster than at any other time in human history, causing major problems for navigation and migratory wildlife. This is by Byron Nelson, March 7th, 2011, at 3:35 a.m. Pretty precise here. Okay, so his article goes on to say, pole position: magnetic north is moving faster than it's hampering and is hampering navigation. The magnetic North Pole is currently shifting at a faster rate than any time in human history, almost 40 miles per year. And some experts believe that it may be the beginning of a complete pole reversal, according to the Independent. The changes are beginning to cause major problems for aviation, navigation, and migratory animals that use Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves. Some airports have had to change the names of their runways to better correspond to the current direction relative to magnetic north. For example, if you're landing on runway 22, well, that's 22 degrees north, etc., etc. And so what was happening in 2011, and I guess each year they're revamping it. What has been happening is basically the pilots are going in for a landing and the runways ain't there. Not good, not good. So especially in bad weather at night or whatever. So they're way off. And this goes on to explain. The other thing, migratory birds, for example, the caribou, which they migrate in herds of like 6,000, 12,000, whatever. They're not there anymore. They're nowhere to be seen. It's like, where are all the caribou? And same, like pigeons and all these mass animal die-offs. You see all these birds and all of a sudden they just start dropping from the sky. That could have something to do with the pole reversal. You never know. It could be other things too, but that's a possibility. So anyway, ever since the magnetic pole was first discovered in 1831, geologists have tracked its progress. Unlike true north, which is marked by the Earth's axis, magnetic north is constantly on the move due to changes in the planet's molten core, which contains iron. Throughout most recorded history, the pole has been positioned around Canada's icy Ellesmere Island. But if it keeps moving at its current rate, it won't be long before it sits above Russia, which it's like you might as well say it's pretty much almost in Russia there now, or the Russian side. It's very, 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 very close to the Russian side there now. Where am I? Okay. Yeah, okay. The thing is that really makes the pole current's movement so unusual, however, is the speed at it is shifting. In the last decade alone, movement has increased by a third, throwing off compasses roughly 1 degree every 5 years. So every 5 years, runway 22 turns into runway 23 or 2. to 1. Again, the degrees of magnetic north is changing. And, okay, and keep going. Changes that fast have already had major headaches for the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. Tampa International Airport in Florida has just spent a month renaming all of its runways, which are named after the degrees in which they point on the compass. Similar changes were directly made to the runway at Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach. And across the country, runways now need to be renamed at least once every 5 years. The shifting pole may also become a grave concern for migratory life, such as birds, turtles, and other sea creatures that use magnetic fields of navigation or over great distances. It is unclear if these animals are capable of recalibrating their navigational instincts to compensate for the changes. Give example, you see, like, for example, sharks or dolphins or sea turtles wash up dead on the shores somewhere where they would not normally be, like dolphins or whatever. They'll be more south than what they were normally. Again, if magnetic north is 405 miles off target, so to speak, although it's constantly dancing around. I mean, think of it like an electrical pulse just moving around, whatever. But the thing is that if you are looking at it from that point of view, you have to understand that if the animals are using magnetic navigation, then that means they're off by 405 miles. So just think of the water temperature differences in 405 miles. That could be enough to kill an animal that's not used to those temperatures. It doesn't sound like much, but if they're coming down from the Arctic or whatever, or cooler waters, or going into warmer waters or cooler waters, it'd be a shock to those animals. So that could explain some of them probably dying because of that. The other angle too is for the birds. Again, they're flying into areas, they're getting disoriented, and maybe they just die of shock of being disoriented. We really don't know. There could either be other things too coinciding with this, such as man-made pollution, radio frequencies. I know submarine sonar. It seems to wreak havoc on underwater sea life and stuff like that. But these mass die-offs and crustaceans and stuff like that, those things don't migrate; they just stay there. So, but that could change something for them as well. Who knows? And how will it affect humans in the long run? We don't know what the true effects are, right? Let's see. Okay, the rapid shift of the pole position has prompted some experts to speculate that the Earth's entire magnetic field may be preparing to flip, whereby all compass invert and point south instead of north. It may sound radical, but geological time pole reversals are relatively common, though they typically occur once every 4 million years or so. It's been about 7.8 million years since the last flip. Scientists disagree on how pole reversals would affect ecosystems around the world, but some alarmists warn of planet-altering catastrophic, whereby earthquakes and monumental tsunamis threaten the Earth for decades. Though such radical doomsday prophecies cannot be completely ruled out, the vast majority of scientists are tempered by their claimed predictions, says NASA. Reversals typically take about 10,000 years to happen, says Jeff Love of the U.S. Geological Survey, and 10,000 years ago civilizations did not exist, which is not really true. There were definitely civilizations 10,000 years ago. These processes are slow, therefore we don't have anything to worry about. So you've got two sides of the argument here, kind of, which is kind of common with a lot of these things, where it's either, we're all going to hell in a handbasket, we're going to die in 5 minutes, or, nothing to see here, and, just go back, don't pay attention to it. I think they're somewhere in the middle is probably the best approach to take, because we have a lot of things to consider here. We have a pole reversal, we have moving, shifting continents, and we have things happening underneath the planet, such as the molten core. The Earth's core right now is kind of one of those things that there's something strange going on inside the Earth, and nobody really knows what's happening. You're hearing strange booms around the world. Nobody knows what that is yet. You don't hear it everywhere, but it seems like in certain areas around the world you're seeing it. Now, sinkholes and stuff like that, there's a lot of theories on the sinkholes. I don't know if the sinkholes are completely out of normal or not, because I haven't researched it enough. But the mass animal migration, I think it was 2010, 2011, it was just like unbelievable. Like every week there was something bizarre. Like every week there's mass animal die-offs, but I'm talking record number die-offs, and a lot of different types of animals, a lot of fish, ocean life, whales beaching themselves, and it's like they're committing suicide. So why are they doing it? Is it U.S. Navy and Russian Navy sonar driving them nuts, or whatever? Is it some sort of chemical in the water? These gigantic algae blooms, or we call the blood rain and the blood algae or whatever, the seas of red. Is it something like that that's killing them? Is it a parasite, or is it kind of all the above because of the shifting magnetic poles? So that, I think, is something that we don't know enough about yet, and should be kept an open mind too, because I do believe that if we look at the magnetosphere of the Earth, it's really at a weird angle right now, and has been for the past couple of years. There's this kind of strange solar storm that's happening, which is blowing. Think about it like blowing a bubble. The bubble elongates before it turns into a round bubble. Well, picture the Earth inside that bubble. Now, when that bubble is completely round, it protects us from UV rays and harmful radiation hitting the Earth from the sun. But when that bubble is blown, it thins out on one side, and that side, obviously, as the Earth's spinning, is getting a little more microwaved. So that's happening at the same time as the poles are moving. So maybe that's what's happening, is the poles are moving faster because of that. And think about it in the sense of like Star Trek, where the force fields are down, the shields are down. So it's allowing more radiation hit the Earth. Which is going to cause different changes. You'll probably see new plant life affected by UV, and old plant life go away. And the proof is in the pudding. I mean, if you go back, for example, to the Cretaceous period, a lightning strike was because the oxygen was so rich in the plant life and stuff like that. The oxygen was so rich on this planet that a lightning strike was like a nuke going off. I mean, you had caterpillars that were like the size of buses, that type of thing. So things do change. And our sun flipped into a solar minimum cycle in 2011. And the volcanic activity kind of coincided with the cooling effect, like that type of thing. And there is a cooling effect around the world. I'm not saying we're going right into an ice age, but the thing is we're due for an ice age. So, and one of the things that is shown for ice ages is that volcanic activity tends to go higher just before an ice age and during an ice age. Why this is, I don't know. But maybe the volcanoes prop up a little more and get a little more active, which 2015, like I say, there was a peak in 2011 and 2015. And you have active around 40 to 60 volcanoes every year is kind of the activity, but it's a little higher on the scale right now. 2016, I think, was just a little lower than 2015, but still on the high side. So not record breaking, but I think 2015 was a record breaker. That type of thing. Well, you have to go and research it. I'll be showing more research on that a little later, whenever I get a chance to make that video. But the other thing is that all that stuff changing, is that a byproduct of the pole shift? Like, how significant is the pole shift in the Earth's, what happens, with, does that pole shift, does that create, more heating of the Earth's core, or less heating of the Earth's core? That type of thing, which will then, radiate out into the magma, and then the magma and the continental shifts and stuff like that will then, play out how they play out. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. With that said, what we do know, and kind of know for sure, is that the poles are shifting. So that's going to change a lot of things. Now, that can also change probably weather patterns. And we know that the jet streams right now are leveling out. The north jet stream and the southern jet stream, they're kind of leveling out. Instead of going, up through the Arctic, down through central, southern Canada, or southern Canada in the United States, and then back up like a W that they were doing forever and ever. The jet streams are now kind of stabilizing more at the top of the world. Why is this? What changes those flows? I mean, the mountains and stuff are still in the same spot, so ricocheting off the air ricocheting off the Earth. Why are these jet streams changing? And some of these jet streams are even reversing. That type of thing. So these are weird things that are happening. Why are they happening? And that we don't know. Now, the climate change thing again, global warming. I don't. I think it's been so heavily disproved. There has been some warming and stuff like that, but you have to look at where they place the sensors. They're all pretty much placed in the around the equator. So, and they take the measurements mostly during the day. They don't take the nighttime measurements. So you don't get a good balance of that. And there's very few. I think there's something like 7,000 or what was the number? I don't quote me on the numbers, but it was something like 7,000 sensors with thermometers in the United States, about 15 or 1,600 across Europe, some across Asia. I don't think there was any in the Middle East. And then, of course, the North Pole had like 8, and the South Pole had like 16, or vice versa. I think it was the other way around. So you don't really get an accurate representation of the entire planet. Now, that said, you got 748 or 49 scientists that say global warming is real, and then you have it keeps growing, about 20,000 scientists saying no, global warming is not man-made. Anthropogenic man-made warming, global warming is a scam. It's about carbon credits. It's about raising taxes, making bigger government, and controlling. It's a scam. It's a scam. Even the guy who came up with Al Gore's hockey stick, I can't remember his name right now, the UN guy that said we're going to be standing on the surface of Mars by 2013 because of global warming, has said there's been no significant warming in 19 or 20 years. I guess it'd be more like 20 years now. And we're seeing that the climate change model that they used is inaccurate. The way they use it, Lord Mugston showed how they did it, and I know the usual argument is all these people that are climate change deniers are basically working for the oil companies. Well, but that's simply not the case. Yes, there are some. Yes, there's manipulation on both sides, but on the other hand, if you want to look at it with the glass half full kind of approach, that okay, it isn't, there's been no significant sea rise in like 600 years, that type of thing. So everything is kind of going along normal in those senses. But the other thing that isn't normal is that, again, with the shifting poles, you're seeing ocean currents kind of change a bit. You're seeing weird things like that, and nobody really knows what the main cause of it is. I'm not saying there isn't any man-made pollution. I've never said that. Obviously there is. We could do a better job of lowering our carbon footprint, sure, but a carbon tax isn't going to get us there. And that the thing about the carbon taxes and the people that are so fixated on the CO2 is the problem with that is the CO2 isn't building up in the atmosphere where they said it would. So they're fixated on that. Meanwhile, they're ignoring things like pole shift, the sun, which seems to hold, very cyclic. One thing they have tracked, and you can go back 20,000 years with the sun's activity versus our climate, they almost seem to move in step. And the solar activity seems to have more of a effect on the Earth's warming and cooling than anything. But warming and cooling with is it the sun's effect that moves the magnetosphere around and the poles? They don't know yet. They don't know all this yet. So it's kind of one of those things we can only kind of look at it in hindsight, that type of thing. Like the generalized theories they have and stuff like that, but they haven't been 100% proven. And there's a lot of things like that. A lot of things like that. But the thing is that if we're these people that are just convinced on the global warming aspect of it, they tend to just fixate on that. They don't look at the bigger picture of everything else, that this might just be a natural cycle of the Earth, because we can track it through the Earth's history and see that we've been through this again several times, and that it does happen. So they know that much. So that said, well, what were the effects during each time this happened? And it seems like the effects that we see around the world have less to do with man-made anthropogenic global warming and more cycles of the sun and the pole shift, which again, this is mainstream science, so it is accepted. So now what happens is all these mass animal, again, we don't know what the pollution factor is for these mass animal die-offs, but I mean, like, for example, how much damage did Fukushima really do ocean-wide? I mean, a little radiation, there's no such thing as a little radiation, even if you're getting it in small doses, you're getting radiation, and everything is about what biomass accumulation, meaning if a fish dies from radiation poison and a whale eats that fish, well, he gets irradiated too. It spreads like a plague. So is that kind of what we're seeing? Like a whole school of dolphins eating a big mass, thing of dolphins going after a school of fish that are toxic? Is that what we're seeing? I mean, more studies needed. We don't know. Or is it the magnetic, navigation is putting them in areas where they can't cope with? We don't know. And again, it'll be a while before I think we truly do know. The only thing we could say for sure is that, okay, it's something to keep an eye on, and not to draw too many conclusions that without backing it scientifically. Now, I myself, like any other internet keyboard warrior out there, I am not a scientist or anything like that. This is just my opinions on it, of the observations made by people who have come up with these studies and whatever. But what can we say for fact? Well, they are renaming runways. That tells you something. That proves pole shift to a great degree. The poles, the magnetic, they can measure magnetic anomalies. They've been doing it again since the 1800s, and they know that the poles dance around. But it's now reportedly about 405 miles off of where it was. So what effects does that have directly? That's what we don't know, especially if it happens over a long period of time, because you can't see direct cause and effect immediately. But that said, we could also say for sure that we do know that it does have effects. It's just we're not fully, and that it is happening, but we just don't know what the full effects are and what the full, how to really, there's not. We got to ride it out. We can't really stop it from happening. We can't, take the poles and make them go back to where they were, or keep them in one stable area. And maybe it'd actually be, the other thing too is, even if we had the technology to do that, that might be more detrimental. Maybe those poles have to keep moving around, or else we die. You know what I mean? That type of thing. I mean, everything that exists on this planet exists because of the conditions that exist on this planet. You change one element, everything else changes. It'll have a domino effect. So the idea of just going against blaming everything on global warming, I don't think is the accurate way to go about it. And I think that would blindside us on a lot of things if we just kept going at that. The other thing too is, like, for example, the slight warming in certain areas. For example, up in the Arctic there was warming, and now it seems to be cooling again, and it was releasing a lot of methane. But methane release, again, is something, again, you track it back to ice ages, you see methane release too, that type of thing. But what effect does that have on everything? Again, and it goes and it goes and it goes. So the thing is, I think man is no match for Mother Nature. She'll do whatever she wants. But I think also too is, if we have the most accurate information, the best way to do that is to remove the financial incentives by governments to tax people. You know what I mean? Like that's the carbon tax is not really going to help us. That type of thing. Funding research, that will help us, sure. That type of thing. Lowering our actual emissions and stuff like that will help. But let's put it to you this way, and this is the big question: the stuff we're seeing now, if human beings weren't even on this planet and none of our technology was on this planet, would we still be seeing the same things? The answer simply is yes, because it's happened before. Now, the pole shift that you see in the movie 2012, that's the Earth actually moving itself, that kind of a pole shift. Now, that actually occurs as well, because the Earth, I know there's going to be flat earthers that'll disagree with me, whatever. I'll tackle the flat Earth thing in another video. I'm still a globist for now, until I see something that is, not, that explains otherwise. Now, one thing somebody explained was that the Earth is a spinning ball, but it's flattening out. Now, some anomalies you could look at is some expeditions around Antarctica. People who tried to circumnavigate Antarctica, and it became out, they were losing something like 12 nautical miles a day, and they couldn't figure out why. And they thought maybe it was due to the ocean currents, but then they were, hitting currents going the other way. So they were thinking, well, maybe possibly the Antarctica is much bigger than what we think of it. So rather than thinking of Earth as a round ball, for a long time it was considered to be more egg-shaped. First it was completely spherical, then from space it shows that it's a little bit more oblong-shaped, that type of thing. But then the theory is that, well, Earth is actually flattening out like a top. As a top spins, kind of, like if you were spinning a pizza dough, it would flatten out. Maybe that is actually happening, which doesn't necessarily mean the Earth is flat, but it means it's kind of like flattening out, which would make sense on a spinning ball, but why would things be letting go to be able to do that, right? Which is kind of a scary anomaly if that's actually happening. Again, no evidence that I have of this. It's just that's when there was one scientist mentioning, well, the Earth is actually, as it spins, it's oscillating back and forth, so you get your winter and you get your summer, and it's also spinning around the sun, and it goes out on a wider track every now and then, which puts us into an ice age about every once in a while. And as it's spinning and oscillating back and forth, maybe something in the core of the Earth is letting go, and the Earth is flattening out like a pizza. That would explain a lot of stuff moving around and stuff like that. And by how much per year, who knows? Again, studies would need to be done, and that would definitely affect the ocean life for sure. Because if the sea bottoms are changing around, so would the food. If food changes around, everything's connected, right? So I don't know. That is a possibility. That is a possibility. But the mass animal die-offs with the magnetic, like you can take a pigeon, put him on the other side of the planet, and he can find his way back home if he's like an actual homing pigeon. Doesn't matter where you put him, he'll find his way back home using the magnetic fields of the Earth. And that thing. So you change that, he's lost forever. You know what I mean? That little pigeon. That little pigeon is not going to be able to reset his compass, maybe. And maybe that's what happens is these things. They just fly till exhaustion because they can't find where they're supposed to be, and they just keep going and going and going. They're going further than what they should be, and maybe they just, it's like who knows? Maybe they just die of exhaustion, just because being. They're never getting where they're supposed to be. Again, more studies going to be needed, so that type of thing. But pole shift versus climate change, the pole shift, I think, is pretty much well proven. Climate change, well, the climate is always changing, and I think that when you look at it like that, we've had ice ages before, we've had molten lava Earths before. We had, I think, 3 major snowball Earths before, where there were like 10 miles sheet of ice around the entire planet. Only thing popping up was volcanic activity, that type of thing. And some of these, I think one stretch was like 3 billion years of these snowball Earths. So who knows? But how would the Earth get that cold? Well, a lot of it has to do with, the butterfly effects of the things that happen today, have 10,000 years from now have drastic effects. Antarctica has been something I've been really watching and stuff like that. There was a map from the Ottoman Empire back in the 1500s that showed Antarctica as a non-ice covered continent. And there's a lot of activity in Antarctica right now, and it looks like with ground penetrating radar, they're finding ancient structures and stuff like that. There's the pyramids. Again, the thing is that the elites don't want to tell us anything for some reason. I don't know why. I can imagine from the religious aspect of it, if they find civilization that's older than Jesus and stuff like that, or that makes Christianity, Islam, and Judaism and all these other religions saying, "Oh no, that's going to rewrite the religions." Yeah, I can understand them doing it from that angle. But scientists, real to the core scientists, should want people to know the truth no matter what. So what's going on in Antarctica? I don't know. The warm spot in Antarctica, is that volcanic activity about to break out? Who knows? Yellowstone Park, it doesn't. That thing seems to be a little more hyperactive than normal, and that thing's ready to blow too. I mean, everything is overdue right now. Everything's overdue. Super volcanoes are overdue. Ice ages are overdue. Complete pole reversals are overdue. So something is weird here. There's a reason why we're behind schedule, on the regular cyclic of things. So whatever that is, what effects is that really going to have on us in the long run? So fascinating topic, fascinating discovery. Again, separating pollution from man-made global warming, anthropogenic global warming, I think has been disproved. I think what we should really be worried about, or maybe not so much because there's not much we can do about it really anyway, but really concentrating on is what does this pole shift actually mean? What is it really doing? What is its effects? And if it's going to happen over a 10,000 year period, how violent is it really going to be? Like maybe the more south the magnetic poles go, maybe there might be a bit of a quickening where it takes forever, and all of a sudden one day, bang, it just flips. and that'd be the most disorienting day probably for everything on the planet if it doesn't kill us. Again, what is the effects of a magnetic pole shift on the human body? Like maybe our navigation, we don't navigate the same way animals do, but maybe to a degree, maybe we need that magnetism for us to function properly. Instead of north being south and south being north. What effect would that have on the human body? What would that have effect on human food crops, that type of stuff? These things we don't know, and I think that's an area where we could be doing a lot better. For example, we don't need a new carbon tax, or I don't know why anybody would agree with a carbon tax. Number one, they never explain what they're going to do with the carbon tax, other than a few buzzwords of we're going to invest in new, clean, sustainable technologies, such as the conversation ends right there. How about this? Rather than having a whole bunch of people working in a government office for makeshift, make work jobs, how about again, when it comes to government jobs, I'm more for like public works than I am for administration. I mean, rather than having 1,000 people working in Transport Canada or whatever, or even in Environment Canada in the buildings, have them out as researchers getting real data real time. You don't need all these people in the office buildings. Get them out there. You don't even have to raise taxes to do this. You could just shift the work to real world work, and then you've got all the research that you could possibly do on anything, and of course make it open and transparent. Get these Fortune 500 companies out of these, like NOAA, for example. They've been found manipulating the data. Every time you hear, oh, this was the hottest year on record, 2014 was the hottest year on record. Well, when you find out how they come up with those numbers too, it's very upsetting. Like NOAA just got caught, which is owned by the Rothschilds. Anything owned by the Rothschilds or Rockefellers seem to be corrupt to the core, whether it's banking or whatever. And we need more of a people's environmental researchers than these big family back type stuff. Because again, they catch NOAA once again lying. They always catch NOAA and NASA lying about stuff. Why do they keep lying? That's not their job. Isn't to lie. Their job is to show us stuff that they find. They're finding. That was their point. Oh well, we can't show people stuff because people can't handle the truth. Yes, they can handle the truth. Good, bad, whatever. Give it to us. If we're going into an ice age, people are going to want to know. If we're going into like a Venus meets Mars kind of atmosphere, people are going to want to know that type of thing. Well, but it'll create panic or whatever. But again, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth. I don't know why these... Now, mind you, these companies are heavily invested in weather and stuff like that. Yeah, they trade the weather on the stock market. And again, so when you hear of, oh, this was the hottest year on record, or this was... depends on what they include. A lot of times they exclude a few things. And again, they just lie by either omission or lie by manipulation. So it makes it hard to get good data whenever you get these, bias confirmation, stuff like that. So it's really hard to get honest reporting or honest research when you have government agendas or whatever. They want a carbon tax. They have to push global warming. Once global warming has been proven, and it has been disproven so much that they have to switch it to some climate change. But there lies the problem. The climate is always changing. To blame everything on man-made, well, again, and the other thing too. Okay, they talk about how much carbon we emit every year, and I saw a really crafty little thing somebody did. It says the math just doesn't lie, and it was like looked like a cell phone tweet or whatever. And I'll see if I can add the picture in here. I'll add it near the end just so you can read it. You can pause the video and read it. And it basically was talking about the boreal forest in Canada, saying, okay, well, Canada emits this much CO2 carbon, right, or this much carbon per year, tonnage of carbon. And I forget how many. It was like a billion tons or 3.8 billion tons or something along that. You'll read the thing, you'll see it. Then they say, okay, it takes 10 times that amount of trees to be able to filter that out in a year. Okay, so right away we've already got the 10 times the amount of trees, so we can be carbon neutral right there. But then when you add up the amount of trees per square kilometer or acre, I can't remember what it was. I think it was by per square 10 kilometers or kilometer. You'll read it in the thing, and then it's like we've got like almost 100 times the amount of trees we need, meaning that we're carbon neutral. So even by their own science, it's stuff like that. Now, is it that cut and dry? No, I know it's not that cut and dry. But it was the same problem you have like with people with deforestation and stuff. Yeah, I'm all for sustainable practices such as selective logging and stuff like that. Sure, everybody's for better technologies that are more efficient and cleaner. No, nobody's against that. But the thing too is you have to like there was a bush 500 acres beside our property that was cut down in I think 2004 2005, leveled the place, completely leveled it. You can't even see to the you can't even see 10 feet in there now. The trees have just grown back so fast. The average tree size that you see now is about 30 to 60 years old. Uh, like big red pines and stuff like that. Okay, they take a lot longer. So like the redwood forests in the California, yeah, that stuff should be protected. A lot of the jungle, South America, yeah, a lot of that's you can have selective logging. This tree's dead anyway; it's still harvestable. Take it out of there. That type of thing. Same in Canada. So we don't need to cut down every tree. We don't need to rip out of every resource out of the ground, but we can find the compromise somewhere. And in the long run, a lot of the times, the same with the oil sands, where they were getting bitumen, extracting bitumen 30 years ago, you wouldn't know because it's all bush there now. So everything grew back, and it grew back now where there's no bitumen, meaning, it's like picking up the rug, cleaning it, and putting the rug back. It's just it takes time to replenish. So it's more of a I think people need to look at it more from a sustainability point of view than a because again you don't want to clear cut everything, but if you can do things from a sustainable point of view, you can keep harvesting resources and stuff like that. And again, keep monitoring. Make sure that one of the biggest problems with the bitumen is the water, and that again you want to regulate that type of thing. But there's a lot of people there. Okay, well, we need a carbon tax, and we need to cut every. We can't step on a blade of grass. Well, these people, most of these people driving their SUVs or flying those big airliners to get to their, environmental conferences. Meanwhile, when they could just use Skype or something. Again, these people are so hypocritical. It's not funny. Leonardo DiCaprio, great actor. Don't get me wrong. I love his acting. Talking about climate change and global warming. He's going to head to one of his 6 yachts that use big diesel engines that burn 25 gallons an hour of diesel, and you're going to tell us to lower our carbon footprint. Yeah, well, lead by example, that type of thing. It's like, things that with the pole shift. Again, the thing with the pole shift is that this you don't want to completely turn a blind eye to it because it is something that is happening. But on the other hand, too, is it going to be like the movie 2012 where the whole Earth follows the pole and the magnetic pole and tries to correct itself that way? I don't know. It could be. We do know of the supercontinents Pangea, and I forget the one that came after it. But these supercontinents, they broke apart. They shift around. The continents are constantly moving around. You have shifting continents. Maybe the shifts of the continents have something to do with it as well, because it's all energy at the end of the day. Whether it's tectonic plates pushing it towards each other, or lava is heat. Heat is energy, right? But where does this energy come from? I mean, that big iron ball of the Earth's core, which they don't know, that iron ball might actually be molten lava or molten iron, or it might actually be hollow. They don't know. Again, we've never been that. I think the deepest we've ever been into the Earth is something like 600 or 1,800 miles under the Earth. It's just the pressure becomes so great that they can't actually get down to the get anything deeper than that. So, a half mile into the Earth, it's a long way to the core. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So when you look at it like that, I mean, there could be diamonds down there the size of Everest just from that pressure. But they've also discovered vats of fresh water way deep in the Earth. Like, how did that get there? Because the theory was that our oceans were created by asteroids coming to Earth with, I guess, frozen ice. And then as that ice would melt off, I guess it would go up into the atmosphere and then, create clouds, and then you'd get rain and, just that whole thing going on over billions of years. But now, these new discoveries, again, tell us that, well, maybe the Earth, already had the water trapped in it. Who knows? And it gets pushed to the surface from time to time, which could mean a water world at some point or a desert everywhere, depending on how the Earth, retains water or whatever. Or maybe just, the thing I would think, and you could, a planet like, say, like Mars, which is dry and arid, okay, which is, has been shown to have water on it and ice and stuff like that. And Mars is kind of like Antarctica. There's a lot of things up there that keep getting shown that look weird. I think there's life on Mars for sure. There's probably like bugs and stuff like that and crustaceans and whatever. But where? That's the question. Where? I mean, the water bear could survive on Mars, no problem. I'm going to do a video on the water bear too, because the water bear is like the most extreme thing that we have on this planet. As far as organisms go. But you've got ice caps on both the North and South Pole of Mars. So Mars's days are not the same as early Earth's. I think they're a lot slower. But the thing is you're going to get heating and cooling. So eventually you're going to get atmosphere on Mars again at some point. It just has to rain. There just has to be one area in Mars where it starts raining, and it'll just spread from there. And maybe that's just how planets form. And then maybe that's also how planets just... Maybe Mars is the planet that was once like Earth and then is no longer. Who knows? They believe, for example, 6,000 years ago, they're starting to... There's theories out there that the Valley of the Kings in Egypt was complete jungle. There's theories that 6,000 years ago that it was a lush land. Now I haven't seen any evidence of that, but there's theories there. How they got this, who knows? So something to look into. So again, we don't know what the full story is. We can only kind of go with the evidence that we're presented. And I think when we only have a few little things to pick from, it's really hard to get the bigger picture. So the neat thing about now is we live in a time where we can document things very well. But that said, maybe the people way back when, 12,000 years ago, were documenting things just perfectly too, and it all changed for some reason. Who knows, right? But anyway, I guess I'll leave it at about that. So you guys tell me what you think, and if you find research, whatever, pro or against, I never censor my comments. I'm always open to the discussion, but this is what I found. These are my opinions based upon the evidence that I found of it. And it has, stuff... More stuff to come along, and again, extracelestial bodies too, stuff like that might be pulling on the Earth's magnetic field, such as Nibiru or whatever. If that thing actually exists, we don't really know. Like hasn't been 100% conclusive. There it is. That's what it is. We don't know because, and the other thing is, where is it? If there is a Nibiru out there, where is it? What is it out there? What is that 12th or 11th, 12th planet thing that's hanging on right at the end of our solar system, that the scientists, they don't really know what this thing is, and it's going in a weird orbit, whatever. Is that Nibiru? Who knows? Or is it a brown dwarf like they think it might be? What is it? Some people say Nibiru's just rounding on, it'll be passing us in 2018. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. But something that big, again, you'd think, okay, well, something that's 10 times the size of the Earth would definitely have gravitational pull on us, and it would make a difference. Sure. We do also know that Jupiter and Saturn, I think it was in 2011, were reported to be higher in the sky than normally, that they've went up. So again, does that play into the Earth flattening out? Who knows? Or the Earth's axis actually tilting? Who knows? That type of thing. The other thing, too, you'd say, well, something the size of Nibiru, if it actually exists, you would spot it right away. But not necessarily so. Give a closer object to the Earth that just passed us a couple of weeks ago, about a 10-story high asteroid, like a building 10-story building size asteroid, passed between us and the moon. They only saw it 2 days before it's passing. I like in that Billy Bob Thornton's comment in the movie Armageddon, where NASA tracks 1% of the sky, and pardon the language, but it's a big ass sky. Well, I think that's kind of the same thing. If you don't know where to look for something, you're not going to see it, no matter how big it is, until it's either hits you or is like so visibly, so visible in the night sky or whatever, that you would actually know where it was. But there does seem to be ancient Sumerian references to a 10th planet. Well, at the time, the 7th planet, because they thought there was only 7 planets. But how do ancient Sumerians know that there's 7 planets? You know what I mean? Like, what technology did they use to be able to figure out what a planet was? How could they separate a planet from a star? You know what I mean? These things we don't know. So how were people that long ago able to be able to... The ancient Sumerians have a lot of mysteries, that's for sure. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. So if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Links down below. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourselves, be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day, eh? G'day, hi, and welcome. All right, let's jump into this. Lots going on around the world, particularly the debate, say, between climate change, global warming, and no global warming, no climate change, just natural cycle. Sorry, a little dry in here. And with all the strange storms we've seen, kind of the sporadicness of them in the last past, particularly high years like 2011 and 2013 and stuff like that. We've seen storms kind of take a different kind of, out of the nowhere, hit you stronger than normal, whatever. Storms in themselves, I think statistically are not up, but there's up years, there's down years. Volcanic activity was major up year was 2011 and 2015. And I'm going to do a thing on volcanoes later. But I just want to read you a little article, so hopefully you guys can bear with me, about the pole shift. Now, apparently the North Pole, which is always moving, is, I think since the year 1900, is 405 miles further than what it used to be. But the magnetic pole shift versus, you have magnetic north and you have true north, right? So you've got basically the north on your compass is usually about 15 degrees off of the magnetic north. Now that's going to be probably changing a little bit different. So there's a 15-degree difference typically is what, so if you're navigating by longitude and latitude versus navigating by magnetic north, you're going to get a difference. Now the big problem is the poles are always moving, but now what we have is the poles are about 405 miles away from where they used to be, according to Google Earth or whatever, and they're moving towards Russia. But anyway, I'll read you this and you can take out of it what you will. Magnetic north shifting by 40 miles a year might be a signal of a pole reversal. The magnetic pole is moving faster than at any other time in human history, causing major problems for navigation and migratory wildlife. This is by Byron Nelson, March 7th, 2011 at 3:35 a.m. Pretty precise here. Okay, so his article goes on to say, pole position: magnetic north is moving faster than it's hampering and is hampering navigation. The magnetic North Pole is currently shifting at a faster rate than any time in human history, almost 40 miles per year. And some experts believe that it may be the beginning of a complete pole reversal, according to the Independent. The changes are beginning to cause major problems for aviation, navigation, and migratory animals that use Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves. Some airports have had to change the names of their runways to better correspond to the current direction relative to magnetic north. For example, if you're landing on runway 22, well, that's 22 degrees north, etc., etc. And so what was happening in 2011, and I guess each year they're revamping it, what has been happening is basically the pilots are going in for a landing and the runways ain't there. Not good. Not good. So especially in bad weather at night or whatever. So they're way off. And this goes on to explain. The other thing, migratory birds, for example, the caribou, which they migrate in herds of like 6,000, 12,000, whatever. They're not there anymore. They're nowhere to be seen. It's like, where are all the caribou? And same, like pigeons and all these mass animal die-offs. You see all these birds and all of a sudden they just start dropping from the sky. That could have something to do with the pole reversal. You never know. It could be other things too, but that's a possibility. So anyway, ever since the magnetic pole was first discovered in 1831, geologists have tracked its progress. Unlike true north, which is marked by the Earth's axis, magnetic north is constantly on the move due to changes in the planet's molten core, which contains iron. Throughout most recorded history, the pole has been positioned around Canada's icy Ellesmere Island. But if it keeps moving at its current rate, it won't be long before it sits above Russia, which it's like you might as well say it's pretty much almost in Russia there now, or the Russian side. It's very, 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 very close to the Russian side there now. Where am I? Okay. The thing is that really makes the pole current's movement so unusual, however, is the speed at it is shifting. In the last decade alone, movement has increased by a third, throwing off compasses roughly 1 degree every 5 years. So every 5 years, runway 22 turns into runway 223 or 21. Again, the degrees of magnetic north is changing. Okay, and keep going. Changes that fast have already had major headaches for the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. Tampa International Airport in Florida has just spent a month renaming all of its runways, which are named after the degrees in which they point on the compass. Similar changes were directly made to the runway at Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach, and across the country, runways now need to be renamed at least once every 5 years. The shifting pole may also become a grave concern for migratory life, such as birds, turtles, and other sea creatures that use magnetic fields of navigation or over great distances. It is unclear if these animals are capable of recalibrating their navigational instincts to compensate for the changes. Give example, you see, like, for example, sharks or dolphins or sea turtles wash up dead on the shores somewhere where they would not normally be, like dolphins or whatever. They'll be more south than what they were normally. Again, if magnetic north is 405 miles off target, so to speak, although it's constantly dancing around. I mean, think of it like an electrical pulse just moving around, whatever. But the thing is that if you are looking at it from that point of view, you have to understand that if the animals are using magnetic, basically magnetic navigation, then that means